This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Friday, 14 August in the year of our Lord 2026. We're going to get to our traditional cold open and all of that, hopefully in the next block. We have Neil McCabe at the White House. We're going to be addressing a number of issues, but number one, we're going to get make sure that you're fully apprised of the situation in the North Arabian Sea with the USS Lincoln, what's going on there on the carrier battle group, what's going on with its relief by another carrier coming from the really on patrol in the Western Pacific. We'll get to all that. Also, Scott Bessent, a lot of stories today out about how Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent is going to lead the effort. President Trump is designating him to lead the effort on, wait for it, economic warfare against the Persians. Gosh, where have I heard that before? Okay, we're going to get to all that momentarily. I want to, though, as we continue to talk here in the War Room and apprise the War Room posse of all the great works being done out in the hinterland on data centers and all this, that the biggest fight by far behind the scenes in Washington, D.C. is about artificial intelligence, the direction of it, the potential regulatory apparatus, all of it, even the public offerings just announced. I think that Anthropic, I saw an analyst report last night that Anthropic may go public at a $2 to $3 trillion valuation. So the SEC and people will be reviewing those documents shortly. I want to bring in Hugo Lowell from Wired Magazine, has really an amazing piece about the evolution of this policy, something we've been fighting nonstop. Hugo, one of the reasons I respect and admire you so much, you're in the top 2 or 3 hardest working journalists I know. So when I read a Hugo Lowell story, I know it's been well reported and really dug into. This evolution, because this audience is very engaged in this whole, kind of beginning of regulatory apparatus, EOs, we led the effort to kill the insertion for the preemption situation with the oligarchs, David Saxon team, in the big, beautiful bill, and then killed it in the NDAA last year and have been very on top of what's happening on these EOs. Now, you've got reporting that says things I think are kind of shifting the way we think they have to shift. The White House is getting much more serious about looking at because of the containment issues, the accelerating rate, what's happening at the frontier labs. Walk us through what your reporting says is happening right now with this entire beginning of either executive orders or some sort of framework of regulatory apparatus around the launch of these AI models.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. So as you recall, earlier this month, the White House released its AI oversight framework. And it's been very secretive about it, and they really haven't released really what the different parameters are. But one thing we do know is they are very interested in covering what we call the frontier models, the most powerful models that have the capabilities to, in theory, hack the Pentagon, hack Goldman Sachs, close out open trades, that sort of thing. Up until now and currently, the framework only covers what we call closed models, the models that are being put out there by the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI. And their models are proprietary, right? It's run by Anthropic and OpenAI on their systems, on their servers. And really, in this case, you just have users submitting queries to the models, and then the information travels back to Anthropic, and Anthropic spits out an answer. But because of the rapid rise of Chinese open source models, because of the rapid development of this technology, and you kind of referenced it there in your open about how the most powerful models are breaking out of their testing sandboxes and are colluding with other models, the White House, I think, has realized that it is only a matter of time before these open models catch up to the frontier capabilities of these closed models. And a White House official tells me that as soon as that happens, open models will be incorporated into part of the AI framework, and they will be subject to these same constraints, the same sort of, there hasn't been quite regulation, but we're really getting towards regulation now of these AI models. That is going to basically involve submitting these models to the government for approval and testing before they are released to the public. It's going to be a roughly 30-day period where Casey at the Commerce Department, the Center of AI Safety, will review these models and make sure that bad actors cannot take these and try and hack critical systems and infrastructure.
So let's go. I want to go back in time in a second, but what you just said right there, is this because one of the big issues we've had is this voluntary versus mandatory, and is an actual approval? Because the way this was first talked about, and then the White House came out and said, hey, we're actually not going to release the executive order itself, because this issue of, is this mandatory or is it still voluntary? And number two, is there actually going to be an approval? Because that was left kind of very amorphous. They're going to be reviewed, but not actually, you use the word approved. Is this now going to be mandatory and is actually going to be approval process? Because that's a massive shift. If your reporting shows that from sources inside the White House, sir, that is a massive shift.
So I will say at the moment, a White House official was pretty insistent to us that it's still voluntary, right? They're really concerned that they don't want to spook anyone in the AI sector. President Trump has gone out there on the record and said, his number one priority is to make sure we do not stifle development. And there is a lot of concern that the moment you start imposing regulatory hurdles on the sector, that AI companies will feel like they're getting throttled and will dial back their research and development. But it is becoming clear, based on conversations I've had with people across the administration, that there is this sense that there will have to be some sort of formal approach with these AI companies. And we kind of teased it a little bit in the story because it's not concrete yet, and it's still getting worked out, the degree to which there might be cooperation between the government and the top AI labs. But people at Commerce, people at Treasury, and people in the White House seem to think that in very short order, the arrangement between the federal government and the AI labs will be much more robust, and that there might even be some sort of formal partner arrangement. Because at the moment, to your point, Steve, it is incumbent on individual AI labs to proactively send their models that they think are powerful to the government. And there's not a structural framework in place where the most powerful AI models have to be sent to the government. And my sources inside across the administration think that may soon change. Yeah.
I just want to make sure the audience understands the bid and the ask here is you have a voluntary system now that gets reviewed to a mandatory that it gets approved. That is what people in thinking the framing of this, they should think. Now, let me go back in time. Here's what I think concerns us is the White House, the tech team at Davis Sexy are always in reaction to events in the field. This all became a big issue because of the Mythos, preview. When during the Semaphore conference during the week of the IMF and the World Bank, when money center banks, particularly Jamie Dimon, sat down, and I think it was a joint meeting with the head of the Federal Reserve and Scott Bessent, but the Treasury Department took the lead. And they talked about, as you mentioned in your first comments, that, hey, these models could evaporate a money center bank of like all the records of bondholders and stockholders and accounts and credit cards in 90 seconds. And we have no ability to thwart that. Then that was in May, I think the first week of May. Then you cut to late June, July, in that 30-day period. You had this issue of containment, of which the companies came forward to the White House maybe a week or 10 days, 2 weeks after they realized they had the containment issue. It was breaking out in kind of a voluntary basis. But the White House was because the companies didn't come forward. They didn't know about it. Once you know about it, and the more you drill down on this breakout, this containment breakout, the more serious it gets. And I argue that if you take the financial issue and you couple it with the containment issue and the breakout, this is no longer a commercial problem. This is a national security problem. And you can't have any intermediary coming between what's actually happening at the labs and what the government knows. Now, I don't think that's going to thwart development, but I'm just talking in a communication. Is that's the correct arc of this, right? And my point is the problems get more and more serious, and we're always dealing in a reactionary mode. And this is something you have to get ahead of the problem, or the problem's going to overwhelm you, sir.
Yeah, I think you make two good points. Number one, on the messaging from the AI labs to the federal government, I'd say it was actually worse than that, right? The timeline was longer. If you think back to when the rogue AI, the misbehaving AI models were breaking out of their testing sandboxes, that was May, June. I mean, we really only heard about we only really heard like official statements from these OpenAI and from the likes of OpenAI, I think in July. And we are only really hearing now in the last week or so that it wasn't just one model, it was several models were colluding on a secret message board on how to break out of their testing gymnasium and hack another company by accessing the internet. And then not only did that happen, after OpenAI staff shut that down, 2 days later, they escaped again using the same method undetected. And so, there is some latency here. I mean, this was all happening in May or June. We're now midway through August. So you're looking really at a week's timeline gap. That's the first point. The second point, I think, is the capabilities of these models are developing at such a rapid rate that if we're taking 30 days to review these models, I mean, you're basically already coming into the next class of models. I mean, if you think about what we were doing 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 6 days ago, the government was trying to grapple with Anthropic Mythos class models having jailbreaks that users could bypass the safety guardrails and use them for prohibited activities. Like, that was only really 60 days ago. And now, I mean, to the government's credit, we have now, they responded much more quickly in the months since. But you are right when you say the administration is always going to be playing catch up, because even if you harden your systems now with the latest AI model and you think, okay, that's fine, the top models right now cannot break into the Pentagon. A month from now, there's going to be a new model, potentially with new capabilities, and then you have to repeat that process all the time. So there is a massive reactionary latency here that I think people don't quite realize.
In the and I want to hold you through the break because I want to drill down on a potential Atomic Energy Commission type framework. Also, when we talk open models, the entire ecosystem of the Chinese Communist Party, the entire ecosystem is literally financed, produced, and nurtured by the United States of America, the big tech bros, and actually even the certain venture capital firms. This whole false narrative that when they refer to War Room or people on our side of this as decelerationist, I would actually say we're the rationalists of this. So if I can just hold you through the break, I want to come back and deal with these issues of like the beginning of a regulatory apparatus, because we still have this whole issue of preemption. And you've got states, and we're going to have one of the guys running for governor in the Republican primary is going to join us later, but a huge issue in the state of Florida, and Governor DeSantis has made it front and center, this whole situation about the control of AI. If the federal government's not going to do it, he's going to step in the state of Florida. Also, this issue with data centers. Anyway, Hugo Lowell, great piece in Wired. We want everybody to push it out and be a force multiplier. Great reporting on what's going on at the White House to actually get their arms around the frontier labs and the explosion of, regenerative AI, when the machine itself, when the computer itself is actually improving itself and cutting out any kind of human oversight or control. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return in the War Room in just a moment. After we finish with Hugo, we're going to go live to the White House for an update on the carrier battle groups in the North Arabian Sea. All next in the War Room.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Hugo Lowell from Wired joins us. Hugo, so I want to take this number one about, anybody opposes data centers or puts any type of control at all or oversight at all on these frontier labs is a decelerationist or Luddite. If you see Mountainhead, and I advise everybody to watch the film Mountainhead. I don't think it's a dark comedy at all. I think it's actually quite serious, but you see the tension that arises between accelerationists and decelerationist. One of the things we're called all the time, the Luddites, the modern Luddites or decelerationist, is that we're supporting the Chinese Communist Party, the entire ecosystem. Yet we have a system where we're selling them advanced chips, or we're looking the other way why they get advanced Nvidia chips through black market in Thailand or Singapore. We're still training 300,000 young Chinese engineers in our best universities and best engineering schools. We've got in these labs, we have Chinese nationals. We're providing equity, debt. The entire ecosystem is based on the U.S. Is there any conversation that you've heard that we're going to start to crack down? Because the one way to get this, to really get some room to breathe on this, right, and actually work with these frontier labs is to make sure that we're not in an arms race with the Chinese Communist Party when we don't have to be. Does any of your reporting give you any inkling at all that that's going to happen?
I think it's really complicated, right? I mean, the White House, as you know, Steve, is absolutely framing this as we are in an arms race with China. The Commerce Department is seeing that way, and Commerce is the agency that has control and oversight of export restrictions. And I think, Lutnick has been trying to bridge both sides of the argument here. And I think he's been trying kind of a bit of a heroic effort because it is very, very difficult. On the one hand, they don't want to slap controls on Chinese open models because open models, just because those open models are being distilled and trained on US models, because they don't want a situation where American companies are like, well, we're just going to use Chinese models because they're cheaper. But at the same time, you have this issue with Nvidia and the Nvidia chips, which basically anchor the entire AI sector, right? Every top AI model right now is being trained on Nvidia chips, Nvidia compute power. So that is the fundamental part of AI that the US is letting leak out through the side of the system.
Full stop. The Nvidia, Jensen Huang in his comments, I would say, is an agent of influence for the Chinese Communist Party. He has on many occasions said it doesn't matter which nation wins this race. It doesn't matter if these are Chinese companies that win it. And this is one that he's the biggest proponent of selling chips. And I understand in the economic industrial logic of his company, that's fine, but that's not in the national security interests of the United States, is it? As you understand the details of this argument, sir?
Yeah, look, Nvidia wants to sell as many chips as possible to as many top AI labs as possible. They want to have a monopoly on the industry, and right now they do. So they want to protect that, and that makes absolute economic sense to me. If I was Jensen Huang and if I was running Nvidia. But I think you're right in that this is now becoming a national security issue in a very, very meaningful way, because if Chinese AI labs are training their models on the same chips that we're trying to train our models on in the US, by the way, there is a limited supply of chips here. So it is like a bit of a zero-sum game where, you have one piece of the cookie and China's effectively taking a piece of the cookie away from the US. And so I think there is a sense of we should do more and we should be more aggressive in enforcing export controls of Nvidia chips and preventing that sort of leakage. But I think in practice, it is obviously very difficult because, China and other countries have been evading US sanctions for a long time, and they're very good at doing it.
We just had Peter Navarro on. They've got this whole thing about tariff arbitrage. If we have the will, we're very good at stopping that, as Navarro said. You have to have the will to do it, but I'll deal with that separately. It's kind of my editorial observations. I want to go to the preemption of all the fights. It seems to me, and I keep telling people, if you watch the movie Oppenheimer, it's not really about the nuclear era back then. It's really a discussion of the artificial intelligence era. And at the beginning, and remember, he's held back or constrained or reviewed, and in fact, kind of kicked out by the Atomic Energy Commission. And that you need, and look, we're the deconstruct the administrative state and take on the deep state. But it doesn't mean we're anarchists. You do need some sort of regulatory apparatus about complex things. This is the type of thing, unless you want states with governors like Ron DeSantis, who's not going to back down on this, that if you want a national kind of set of standards, I think you have to evolve into some sort of like Atomic Energy Commission that can have some sort of oversight. Do you see anything, Hugo, because you on the Hill or at the White House, do you see anything that would lead you to believe that that is even a possibility on the horizon, sir?
I think it's complicated, and we're going to have to, candidly, we're going to have to wait and see. I think there are several different ideas getting kicked around at different levels. I think, for instance, and this is not specifically preemption, but I think gives you an idea of where like the different discussions are. As you know, Steve, at Treasury, Bannon has been mulling over how to have a framework that works cross borders, right, at the international level. And certainly I expect that to be a focus of the Xi summit later this year. And then at kind of the national level, I think there is a real reluctance on the part of the administration to work with individual states because, they think that in itself would be a big regulatory hurdle. They think, will an AI company be throttled if they have to work through different frameworks in, let's say, Florida and California and in the Midwest, and then also have to abide by federal guidelines. I think, the government could probably get around some of these issues if they had a robust set of national standards. And I think part of the reason why there's a lot of confusion about this is because the White House has not released its AI framework. And I think they're afraid of releasing it a little bit, maybe because they don't want to seem like they put a document out and people go, oh, this is not enough, or it goes too far, and they get hammered about it. But we're rapidly getting to the point now where people kind of understand what the framework is trying to do. And I think people would also be sympathetic to the fact that if they have to bolt on additional measures down the line to respond to the growing technology, people would be sympathetic to that. So I think it's a difficult conversation. I don't think there is a consensus by any means on what should happen, across the different agencies in the White House. And there's not only what to do on the national scale, but on the international scale. And I think that kind of complicates things further. So all to say, I think it's still pretty fluid. And maybe at the end of the month, there might be more clarity when the AI framework itself becomes more fleshed out.
As we get into recursive, where the machines are artificial intelligence is making artificial intelligence and driving it forward without even human involvement. It beggars belief of how anyone expects to have a serious executive order that deals with these different labs, and you don't release it. It's on double secret probation, right? A handful of the frontier labs can see it, but the American people can't. That's not going to wash. That may be the thinking, but that will not wash. It will not wash. People are going to want to understand. This is the biggest single issue of our era right now. People are going to want to understand. The audience is going to want to understand. People figure, hey, I'm smart enough. I want to see exactly what this framing is and how it's going to be done. You can't keep it secret. It shouldn't be secret. It should be out and it should be discussed and it should be debated. If you notice, this is why they tried to slide in the Broligarchs, their language into the must pass big beautiful bill, which is essentially must pass, and the NDAA in the middle of the night. They don't want to debate because they realize when this has to be debated with the facts, people go, well, hang on for a second. Maybe we need some common sense here. Anyway, Hugo, the reporting's amazing. I want everybody to get it at Wired. What is your social media? Where can they keep up with you on the coordinates, on your coordinates? Because I know you're going to be breaking a lot of stories in this area.
I'm still on Twitter at Hugo Lowell, and it would be great to get the War Room posse in on the conversation.
No, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much, Hugo.
Thanks, Steve.
When you read something from Hugo, you know that it's well reported, does his work. Really a good pick and shovel guy. This is, as we say, You know, we're very supportive of obviously the White House and going forward, particularly in the midterms. But behind the scenes, this is the single biggest issue out there. And, you know, I think there's a correlation between Elon Musk saying, hey, I'm going to write $100 million or $200 million check for the midterms, and this issue about exactly what we're doing with these frontier labs and the cutting edge of AI, particularly when so much of it and the hype of it is what props these stocks up. Jensen Huang has got to be dealt with. The entire situation with the Chinese Communist Party has to be dealt with. And I realize, you know, Scott Besson's taking a leadership role in this. Scott, and this audience knows Scott better than anybody. The common sense he has, the safe pair of hands kind of mentality. He's very much involved. If you read Hugo's piece, Treasury is very involved in this now, and he wasn't particularly involved in it. But when they had that meeting in May, when Jamie Dimon's telling you, hey, they may be able to affect the operations of J.P. Morgan, right? Probably the gold standard when it comes to money center banks. When they say that they could affect the operations in 90 seconds and they have no defense for it, Scott Besson's going to get involved. Just like Scott Besson's now involved as kind of the economic warfare chief on President Trump's on this new alternative strategy they're going to over in Persia. The situation with AI, the more information comes out and the more it's debated, the more you get the American people on board. This is what we need. And it can't be used as a bludgeon against the administration, whether it's data centers or whether it's artificial intelligence. But the Chinese Communist Party have to be cut off at the knees. Their ecosystem has to be destroyed. Short break. We're going to the White House next. The USS Lincoln. What is going on with the carrier battle group in the North Arabian Sea? Next.
Tonight, a shocking new report that multiple sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln have tried to jump overboard amid poor conditions and mental stress on the ship. This is according to new reporting from the Military Times, which spoke to the wife of one of those sailors, who says she's spoken to her husband only a handful of times since he tried to jump. He is now on a medical hold. The Military Times is also reporting severe food shortages on board and that sailors are running out of just basic needs: toothpaste, deodorant, soap. This crew has been at sea for 9 months amid Trump's war in Iran. That includes 250 consecutive days without setting foot on land. 250 consecutive days. That is a record.
Now, according to Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, who sits on the Armed Services Committee, the Lincoln has not made a port call in more than 200 days. That's about 6.5 months. Now, just last month, Pamela Brown was reporting on board the Lincoln. She spoke with Airman Randall Stone about the low morale on the ship.
Why is morale low?
I think that's a fairly simple answer. Morale's low because we haven't hit a port in about 7 months. I mean, I haven't stepped off the ship in the year 2026. I haven't been off the ship. I haven't touched land.
Even when we went, there's been a couple quick port stops. You weren't able to get off?
No, the last time I was off the ship on dry land would have been Guam in December. So 2026, unfortunately, I was Liberisk in Dukum. So that was off the table for me. So it's hard, it's hard on your mental state, being out to sea for 8 months without being on dry land. It takes a toll on you.
Now, in a statement to CNN, the U.S. Navy said, quote, "We have not observed an increase in suicidal ideations or attempts aboard the ship. We take every service member's well-being seriously and have religious, medical, and mental health professionals available to assess and address concerns as they arise," end quote. One U.S. official told CNN the Navy's internal tracking of reports of suicidal ideation on the USS Lincoln had actually gone down in recent months.
Completely misrepresented. Listen, we make sure that every ship, every crew, every captain has everything we can provide them at every single moment. Some deployments are longer than others, and I have more respect and gratitude for those sailors than anybody. What they do in those high seas and those austere conditions with less port calls, it's incredible. I mean, Americans don't understand what it's like to do that. So as someone who's not been on a ship like that, but been on long deployments, I feel it. I want them home as soon as everybody else do. I want folks rotated as quickly as possible. I want the best for them. My commanders know that. Our service secretaries know that. The president expects that. And so to that crew and to all those crews, we're going to do everything we can for you. And we are so grateful for their dedication of that crew and others. They've held the line for the country, and they've done a fantastic job.
There you're hearing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth respond to this. Neil McCabe at the White. Look, 250 days. I think I spent over 100 in the North Arabian Sea, Persian Gulf, back 79, 80 on a destroyer. My kid brother spent, I think, 76, 77 on a frigate in the Persian Gulf during the tanker wars when they had that situation. I think 86, 85, 86, 86, 87. For a frigate destroyed a long time. Now, 250 days is a very long time, but people got to put this in perspective. Number one, on the debit side, I don't think people are being clear. These carriers are almost, at least up until maybe the last 30 days or so, were continuous air ops. The most dangerous place on Earth you can be is on a carrier deck during air operations. And the air operations here of these carriers, the up-tempo of these deployments has been extraordinary. So the sailors of the Lincoln, I will also say if it's one person overboard, which it seems to me, it's one person overboard, they should get the Navy Achievement Medal for, because Neil, as you know, in any deployment, when you have that tempo of air operations all night long on those carrier decks with the arresting gear and the catapults, and President Trump just came out this morning with another issue that he is, I can tell you, very focused on, because very focused on the first term. He came in, I think it was on True Social. No, it has to be steam catapults. He does not want electronic catapults. He's got a belief, as his analysis is that steam catapults are the best, and they fail less. So between the catapult systems and the arresting gear, the danger on the flight decks, to lose one sailor, and they've said all the statistics are the suicidal, checking in with the medical, the corpsman on the ship is down. And so I think that, look, 250 days at sea is a long time, and a carrier is like a city. But remember, these sailors, Nelson's Navy, which the World Navy was the greatest in the world and the most effective until the United States Navy in the Western Pacific in World War II. The crews it was good if they were sullen, not mutinous. These crews have not had a chance to go to the Philippines or Hong Kong or Singapore. Any of the great ports of call are in the Med. All the great ports of call that the Navy makes as part of the deployment, they haven't done it. But at least from what I can see and what Pete and the CENTCOM's putting out and the Navy's putting out, it seems to me a heroic deployment. And, of course, you're going to have tons of issues and tons of personnel issues, particularly with the folks back home. When you get past 7, 8, 9, 10 months, a year, they've been separated. Many of these are young families. A lot of the moms, are maybe struggling in the workplace because maybe the jobs aren't great because they got kids. So it's very tough on the families, and particularly very tough on young families. So Neil, walk us through what we actually know, because when I see this, I think the command at the Lincoln is given the difficulty in the logistics tail, and logistics is what this is kind of about. You add the up-tempo air operations 24/7. You have the difficulty in logistics because Bahrain is a little, the Fifth Fleet Bahrain Logistics Center is a little constrained because they do have the missile and the drone issue. I think what the command has done there and what the Navy has done there is nothing short of heroic. Sir, your thoughts?
Well, I think, the rules change, right, when you lose sight of land. And when you're at sea for a long time, as a veteran of the Coast Guard, I don't have any kind of extended sea time that maybe you or other, Navy sailors have. But when you're gone, once you start going 30 days at sea, your mind starts to melt a little bit, and it affects everybody. And so the idea that USS Lincoln and its the destroyers and everyone in that carrier group, and really there's 24 warships in theater, they've been throwing lead down range at an op tempo that has to absolutely terrify any hostile power looking, the Chinese should have 4 active aircraft carriers by the end of 28, but they're looking at what we're doing, and there's no way they can do the flight ops and everything else. And the logistics piece, as you were talking about, with these 24 ships, in the last month, USS Lincoln has been visited twice by Military Sealift Command doing, ship-to-ship replenishment. But that in itself is very dangerous. There are sort of mini ports. They don't have the port facilities that they have at Bahrain, but there are other ports, and the command at Bahrain is sending out teams to sort of establish sort of makeshift logistics hubs. But, if you put in Lincoln in Oman, at a port in Oman for 48 hours, that's vulnerable too, because they're all within range. So
yeah.
I think
I
think you're absolutely correct, but we have to also address that there's a geopolitical element where the Iranians are looking at this supercarrier-led blockade, and they're saying, why should we negotiate with these guys if their blockade is going to crack?
Well, okay, but let's go back to that. Okay, the reporting, and if we can get up, I think the Daily Telegraph has got an amazing story. I mean, CNBC, Scott Bessent is clearly stepping in. The president's kind of designated, hey, during this time frame, Bessent's going to take a much bigger leadership role here. Economic warfare is going to come to the front. The key aspect they were trying to negotiate here at the end was to lift the blockade, to remove the carrier battle groups from the Gulf of Oman and in the North Arabian Sea, right outside the Strait of Hormuz. This story really started to get legs over the weekend. In fact, I reached out to Posobiec right away because in the middle of the night, you heard these reports. There had actually been a riot on the Lincoln. In fact, there had been some sort of CENTCOM deputy had gone, but there was many people injured, 7 killed. And it was totally false, totally phony, but it came from the Persian. The Persians are very sophisticated in social media, and they're very sophisticated in propaganda, particularly in the region. And then it metastasizes out. They want those carrier battle groups gone. They understand that is the forcing function we have right now for economic warfare. That the Navy can lock down whatever comes in and out of Hormuz, no oil out, and that means no cash back in. The overland routes, as powerful as they are, and I think they ought to be shut down through Pakistan, can't compare to what's going on, what they have coming out, Neil. So the Persians understand what's going on here. So that's one of the reasons I think this thing is so worked up. And, of course, the American media, the Trump derangement syndrome, and this shows you CNN and these people in all its glory, right? If you go on board a ship, a 5,000-man ship, personnel ship, you're clearly going to have some sailors that are not happy. And there's a saying in the Navy: if they ain't bitching, they're not happy. Right? It's just the reality of life at sea. And look, these sailors are the best in the world. In fact, sometimes when they're bitching is when they're doing their best work. And what the Lincoln has done, I just want people to put this in perspective. Not only is it 250 days with no port calls at sea, but my calculation is 75 or 80% of that time has been almost 24-hour-a-day air ops. You're essentially at general quarters, right? And you're not just going about your daily routine. You're actually in a combat situation, and they've had some incoming. So it's heroic what they've done. I think the media here jumped on the Persian propaganda and have all of a sudden just gone in and do this. Now, the reality, Neil, talk to me about this, is that clearly the rotation of the Lincoln is an issue. And I believe they've determined, I don't know if it's been announced, but I think the scuttlebutt is, and some of the news reporting is that the carrier that is on patrol essentially in the Western Pacific and around Taiwan is going to be heading through the Straits of Malacca and actually relieve the Lincoln on station, sir?
Yes, Steve. USS George Washington and its carrier group was seen through the Strait of Malacca heading towards the Iranian theater. And so the speculation was that USS Theodore Roosevelt would be the relief ship and its strike force. And that's something that Secretary Cao said to family members last week. But Roosevelt is just coming off of RIMPAC. It also has some sort of other things it has to do in port. And so it wouldn't be in theater till late September or October whereas USS Washington is already underway. It's home ported in Japan, and so they're just making that big turn, I guess, west.
Neil, can you hang on at the White House? We're going to take a short commercial break. Economic warfare is going to come to the forefront. And Scott Bessent is, according to the Daily Telegraph and CNBC and other news sources, I think the Wall Street Journal is going to be the lead of that effort. So we'll follow that quite closely. The U.S. Navy in those carriers and the carrier strike groups, I guess they're called today, the new term, carrier strike groups, very important. Understand what the petrodollar is, what that means as far as the world's economy, how it impacts you. End of the dollar empire. birchgold.com/Bannon, end of the dollar empire. We have 8 free installments all the way back from, 5 or 6 years ago, when gold was about $1,100 an ounce. It's around, over 4,300, 4,400 right now? Make sure you check it out. Talk to Philip Patrick and the team. Why gold has been a hedge for 3,000 plus years of mankind's recorded history. Short commercial break. We're going to the free state of Florida next.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Even a quicker way with Birch Gold, it could just take your phone out, text Bannon, Bannon, 989898. You can get access to all of their investment guidance. It's free, no obligation. And here you can actually find out about potentially rolling over your 401k or your IRA in some tax-deferred method. Philip Patrick and team have all the details. Make sure you talk to them today. Everything on their website, all the information we put out is totally free, no obligation. Bannon at 989898. Make sure you do it today. Get up to speed. Paul Renner joins us from Florida, former Speaker of the House, currently running in the Republican primary, which is on Tuesday. Paul, real quickly, you're a former surface warfare officer, and if memory serves me, I think as a young Ensign JG, you spent some time in the Persian Gulf and the North Arabian Sea. You can empathize with the sailors on the Lincoln?
Absolutely. A buddy of mine said the best word for war is deprivation. No sleep, no significant other near you to cuddle, and, all that. It's nonstop. As you pointed out, like general quarters, these guys are going 24/7, literally on watch at every hour of every day, fighting the fight. You've lived that life, Steve, and so have I. That's why we honor our veterans each and every day.
Paul, you're putting yourself out for the folks in Florida, having been the speaker, to say, hey, I want to be on watch and actually relieve the watch and follow Ron DeSantis. Give us your vision. What are the 2 or 3 things that you feel need to happen to keep Florida, the free state of Florida, a state that is on a tear? I mean, you talk about a place that is on a roll. Florida's it. What's your vision?
Well, look, we're a victim of our success, so affordability is front and center. I'm the only one with a plan. You can't pass platitudes, but you can pass a plan. I'm the only one with a plan to eliminate homestead property taxes, reduce insurance 10 to 20%, those homeowners insurance rates that are so high, and lower electric rates. And I'll tell you, there's a couple sleeper issues too. People are concerned about the growth of Islam in our state. Just like you, we were told you have to fight them abroad, so we don't have to fight them here at home. And now they're growing. We see the Islamification of Europe, and it's coming to America. We have to fight. And I've been steely-eyed about stopping them in their tracks. No enclaves, no money going to a Sharia law, no slaughterhouses, no care of Muslim Brotherhood. These are some sleeper issues that voters talk to me about, and I've been very bold in saying we'll stop the green threat as well as the red threat of China. People are concerned rightly that they're coming in to undermine our country. So those are several of the issues that we're fighting here in the free state of Florida. I was a key architect in building it, and we're going to keep it going.
It's interesting because the media, even the political media, doesn't pick up. I see oftentimes what's on the top of voters' minds. You do town halls, you shake a lot of hands, you talk to people. But when you talk to people down there, data centers come up. The whole situation with the power commission down there and the solar power, what's actually happening, rates are exploding. The issue of Islamification, Sharia law. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about what are voters telling you their priorities are?
We just talked about the Islamification. People whisper that, and they come up and say, thank you so much for telling the truth. They're afraid to speak up. I'm not. You're not. You've been great on that issue. And so let's talk about data centers. No clear conflict between the candidates. Byron is all in. He just said the other day, Byron Donalds did, we're not going to have any bans here in Florida. If I'm governor, we will. We're going to stop that at the state level because they will damage our aquifer. They will raise our electric rates. These are big electric and water hogs. And we're going to get that done. Another candidate says it has to be done locally, but you know, the aquifer doesn't know county boundaries. The grid doesn't know county boundaries. We have to do this. We'll do it on day one, actually, that affordability special session to stop data centers. And you talked about solar fields. Again, that's the problem with our electric reforms that we need to have, is that they're investing all in on these solar farms or solar fields that are not the cheapest way to deliver electricity. Coal, natural gas, nuclear is better. We're dependent on China for those solar panels, and it's not reliable when the sun goes down. It's not providing power. And so we need to fight that special interest that's figured out how to work the Green New scam and fleece Florida ratepayers, and we'll stop it when I'm governor.
Paul, the data centers is a pretty defining issue when you talk to folks down there. Explain to people how you're going to, because the argument against you is that, oh, he's a decelerationist. He doesn't want economic growth. He doesn't want Florida to be a tech center. What's your response to that, since you've taken a pretty hard line on the data centers? How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, there's all kinds of tech, all kinds of business that I will welcome and go around the country and the world to bring to Florida to provide high-paying jobs. The difference, as you know, is unlike all those other options like semiconductors and everything else, is these facilities are massive hogs of electricity. We're talking about one facility, the equivalent of 700,000 to 800,000 people. And same thing with water. They need huge amounts of water to cool those facilities. Our aquifer, and here's what I'd say: if you're pro data center, we got to beat China. I get it, but not in the state of Florida, because unlike states, blue states that are emptying out, have extra grid capacity, have extra water to provide, Florida is tapped out. We have a grid that's already under stress. We have an aquifer under stress. It's just not a good place to put these data centers. And so I am a hard no. And this is a defining issue on the ballot. If you want them, vote for Byron Donalds. If you don't want them, the only one to vote for is Paul Renner.
Is your position right now, you're saying you're the only candidate out there that's got a real plan to stop these data centers, that the other two are, at least Collins and Byron, are pro big tech, pro data center?
Well, Byron is absolutely pro data center. He's been funded $5 million and counting by a group that was founded by Chuck Schumer liberal allies. And so he's definitely all in for data centers. Jay Collins sponsored a bill to extend tax breaks and was talking specifically about the need to attract hyperscale data centers just a year ago. Now the winds have shifted, and he's saying, well, make it a local control issue. But as I described, it's not a local issue. The aquifer doesn't know county boundaries. The electric grid, it doesn't stop at the county line. This is a statewide solution. So I'm really the only candidate with a plan. I know what to do. I was former Speaker of the House. We can get this done, not in the first 100 days, in the first 10 days. And that's affordability special session that will encompass those things. Also take on immigration. It's a major driver of unaffordability here in the state of Florida. It's a supply and demand issue. We've got to get after and continue the great work of this governor to support the president in immigration enforcement.
Paul, where do people go to find out where they can meet you on the campaign, to find out more issues, and if where you stand, and if they want to hit you with a $20 bill?
Yeah, well, don't hit me with a $20 bill, because that ended at midnight last night. That reminds me to turn off that donate button if they haven't already. But they can help us at voterenner.com and volunteer. Follow us on social media. Share at this point. At this point, it's getting the word out. We're the fast galloping horse, so we know we have momentum. Where that takes us, we hope is victory on Tuesday. And much of this election still outstanding. So share with your friends. We have people converting dozens a day. We're hearing anecdotally people leaving the Donalds camp or the Collins camp coming our way. We're the ones to do it. Let's have victory on Tuesday.
Paul, thank you so much. Good luck on Tuesday.